Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with your host, Matt Truman.
Hello. This is Matt Truman. Thank you for downloading this episode. Thank you for sharing with a friend. Today on the podcast, we have a lot to talk about. So we're going to update folks who may have been paying attention or not paying attention on the Russia, Ukraine, NATO, U.S., Belarus, Poland, that situation over in Eastern Europe. We're also going to talk about the Durham report. This goes back to when Donald Trump first ran for office, and it turns out he was spied on. We're going to play some clips out of the news and discuss these two topics. But first, my Bengals lost the Super Bowl. Man, what a great year that was. I enjoyed the Bengals. I enjoyed watching them. And every now and again, it's good to step out of all this stuff and just either put your brain into the Bible or just escape totally, or try to, and watch some football. So I enjoyed watching the Bengals this season, and I enjoyed watching their run to the Super Bowl and almost winning that game. Boy, oh boy, I think they could have did it. I don't know. Anyway, good run for the Bengals, and we'll see everyone next year in the Super Bowl again, I think. All right, folks, Russia, Ukraine, what is going on? I know a lot of the news media said Wednesday, the 16th, would be invasion day for Russia. Well, it turns out it doesn't look like that's going to be happening. And here on this podcast, we've been predicting after the Olympics, if there were to be an invasion, it would happen after the Olympics. I've never said there was definitely going to be an invasion, never said there wouldn't be an invasion. I said if Russia chooses to invade Ukraine, which is possible. We talked about the history in the Donbass region. We've talked about eastern Ukraine and what's happening in western Ukraine and how Crimea was annexed and all this stuff here on the podcast. And we've talked about the escalation up to, even before U.S. media was really diving into this story, we've been talking about it here on Truman's Town Hall because it's an important issue that I think we all should watch. And it's an important issue that I think you can look at on all sides and kind of see what's happening here. I believe this is a lot of politics, a lot of covert actions being done behind the scenes that none of us really see to garner more power throughout the world, whether it be NATO trying to garner more power, the U.S., or Russia trying to, get back to their roots of the Soviet era with Vladimir Putin, the former KGB agent. I mean, we all know this, right? So what do we know today, which is the 16th? I'm recording this on the 15th, the night before, so if something happens, well, I was wrong. But I don't believe I'm going to be wrong, folks. I don't believe I'm going to be wrong. As we record this, it is 5:04 a.m. in Ukraine, which means it's 10:04 p.m. in the United States. So we're about 7 hours behind them. I'm not seeing anything. I'm looking through the news, listening, reading, watching, doing everything I can to keep up on this situation. And so far, nothing has happened. It is the 16th in Ukraine, and nothing has happened. So I think I'm right. If there's going to be an invasion of Ukraine, which is still possible, it won't happen until after the Olympics. And my reasoning with that is China is hosting the Olympics, and China and Russia are allies in the endeavor to move the West out of a power situation throughout the world. The West being the United States and many of the European countries that we ally with, such as France, the UK, Germany, and our allies throughout NATO, Estonia, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, right? And who wants to be a member of NATO? Ukraine. But there's a lot of things that have happened in Ukraine. Ukraine's not like, we have corruption in our country, right? folks get arrested and things. It's not like our country. I mean, yeah, we could do a lot of things to change the United States, and it would be better for all of us. We're going to talk a little bit about that later, but it's not like the Ukraine. The Ukraine's a little bit different. They have a lot more corruption in Ukraine than they do in the United States. A lot more folks are vying for positions and power, and and they use a little bit harsher tactics in Ukraine and Russia and that part of the world than they do here. We still use those harsh tactics. Don't get me wrong. Certain folks do. We'll talk about that a little later. But I don't believe it's as corrupt as it has been in the Ukraine. Now, we've given Ukraine a ton of weapons over the years and currently given them weapons. So it's all interesting, and we'll talk about it here. Let me start with New York Post put out an article early on the 15th. Russia says it pulls some troops back from Ukraine border. Kiev, NATO, not convinced. Russia said Tuesday it is moving some of its forces away from Ukraine's border and slammed reports of an imminent invasion as ostentatious hysteria. But the West reacted skeptically to the announcement, questioning the Kremlin's credibility and pointing to the presence of a massive military force still arrayed near the former Soviet state. We've always said the troops will return to their bases after the exercises are over. So they had some military exercises in Belarus, and it was large-scale military exercises. They were launching missiles in the sea and all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Big exercise. This is the case this time as well. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said, according to Reuters. So you can read that. It's posted. I posted this article over on Truman's Town Hall podcast page, so you can check that article out from the New York Post. All right, so we're going to play a clip out of DW News. It's a German news network, and just thought you folks might want to hear it. The title of this is Ukraine Crisis. Putin says Russia does not want war, and like I said, there's been reports that they've pulled some troops back. There's also reports that the equipment is staying in position. So is it a feint to say, okay, we'll pull some troops back, so let's keep talking? Well, that's good. As long as there's continued diplomacy, we still have peace, and we can continue to get there. What would be bad, Putin's not a good guy, right? Okay? But what would be bad if the Biden administration continues to ramp up things, continues to talk about a war, or continues to describe this in a way that is war is imminent, because it's not imminent to the point that it's going to happen tomorrow. So there is room for diplomacy. Anyway, let's listen to the clip out of DW News.
We begin the day unable to say that the threat of war in eastern Ukraine has passed. Earlier today, Russia announced that it was pulling back some of its forces near the Ukrainian border and sending them back to their barracks. At first, it seemed to be a tentative sign of de-escalation, coming exactly when U.S. and European intelligence have been warning that Russia is now ready to launch a military strike on Ukraine. Let's pull in the map here. It tells a story of anything but de-escalation. Over the past few months, the Russian military has positioned more than 100,000 troops, you see right there, along the eastern and the southern border with Ukraine. Ukraine's northern border with Belarus, you see right there, it has now about 30,000 Russian troops in position. The Pentagon says eastern Ukraine is almost surrounded and is the obvious target for an overwhelming military invasion. The head of NATO today warned that shuffling around troops while leaving weapons in place is not a sign of de-escalation.
At Harbor Freight, we know that building something yourself.
Signs from Moscow that diplomacy should continue. This gives grounds for cautious optimism. But so far, we have not seen any sign of de-escalation on the ground. Russia has amassed a fighting force in and around Ukraine, unprecedented since the Cold War. Everything is now in place for a new attack. But Russia still has time to step back from the brink, stop preparing for war, and start working for a peaceful solution.
My first guest tonight says there is a solution to this crisis, and it involves a moratorium on NATO expansion. Thomas Graham was Senior Director for Russia on the National Security Council and Special Assistant to former President George W. Bush. He is now with the Council on Foreign Relations. Mr. Graham, it's good to have you on the program.
Good to be here.
You write that a moratorium on NATO's eastward expansion for 20 to 25 years could be the answer to ending the impasse that we are in right now. Why isn't that idea gaining any traction?
Well, I think it has become part of the public debate, certainly in Europe, to some extent in the United States, and even in Russia. I note that the German reporter asked a question at the press conference between the Chancellor and President Putin today as to whether a moratorium was a possibility. Now, neither man answered the question, but I think that's evidence that it is part of the public debate.
Today, the German Chancellor said that Ukraine's membership in NATO is not on the agenda, and he said it will not be on the agenda while he and Vladimir Putin are in office. Now, Scholz is speaking to what many diplomats say, that former Soviet republics, including Ukraine, are still years away from being ready for NATO membership. Am I reading that right?
Absolutely, and I think that almost any NATO official and any U.S. official would say the same thing. We're not talking about any near-term membership by any countries of the former Soviet space. And so I think that really is off the table for an extended period. And I do believe that some agreement on that and how long that period is going to be part of the final solution. The diplomatic question is how you're going to formulate that to the satisfaction of Moscow, Brussels, and Washington.
And all of this is assuming that NATO will exist in its current form in 20 to 50 years from now. I mean, that assumption, though, it comes with some pitfalls, doesn't it?
Well, certainly. Nobody knows what the future is going to be like. And that's one of the reasons why an agreement on a moratorium might eventually find approval from Moscow. Who knows what's going to happen in 20, 25 years? But I do think that we will see significant transformation in NATO under any circumstances. The world has changed. The interest of European allies has changed. The United States has to focus on East Asia as well. So we will see transformation in the way NATO functions, if indeed NATO continues to exist over the very long term.
All right, folks, so there's that little clip out of DW News from Germany. I believe what they're talking about is something more along the lines, as we work through this and we understand history, as students of history, that this is where it's going to go. I think NATO may be the way out of this situation, as concerning as it still is. If the United States truly does not want to go to war with Russia, and NATO truly does not want to go to war with NATO and is able to convince the United States, we cannot go it alone, folks. We got Russia versus China. We need NATO. But if they're able to put a moratorium or something along those lines to say, you know what, the Ukraine is not going to be a member of NATO. They are an ally, and we don't want you to invade their country and destroy the people of that country, but we're not going to invite them into NATO. If NATO is able to convince Russia that that's going to happen, whether it be a written document, treaty, whatever you want to assume it may be, I think serious de-escalation would happen. does that say, there has to be some concessions on Russia's part as well? They have to pull back from Ukraine's border. There has to be some type of a settlement between eastern and western Ukraine. Folks, we've talked about the war. There's been, almost 20,000 Ukrainians have died over in the Donbass region, Donetsk and all that, over there in eastern Ukraine versus the Ukrainian soldiers. There was a bit of a civil war going on over there. So there has to be something resolved there as well. So there's a lot of diplomacy that can happen with this if the two countries, especially the United States and Russia, are able to come to some type of an agreement and de-escalate this situation, or all hell's going to break loose and we're going to be in World War III. That's still an option. Definitely still an option. If the U.S. wants to be stubborn and they want to wag the dog more than what they've already been doing, and I say them as in the Biden administration, let's play a clip from the Biden administration.
Today I'd like to provide an update on the crisis involving Russia and Ukraine. From the beginning of this crisis, I have been absolutely clear and consistent. The United States is prepared no matter what happens. We are ready with diplomacy to be engaged in diplomacy with Russia and our allies and partners to improve stability and security in Europe as a whole. And we are ready to respond decisively to Russian attack on Ukraine, which is still very much a possibility. For all the events of the last few weeks and months, this has been our approach, and it remains our approach now. So today I want to speak to the American people about the situation on the ground, the steps we've taken, the actions we're prepared to take, and what's at stake for us and the world, and how this may impact on us here at home. For weeks now, together with our allies and partners, my administration has engaged in non-stop diplomacy. This weekend, I spoke again with President Putin to make clear that we are ready to keep pursuing high-level diplomacy, to reach written understandings among Russia, the United States, and the nations of Europe to address legitimate security concerns, if that's his wish. Their security concerns and ours. President Putin and I agreed that our team should continue to engage toward this end, along with our European allies and partners. Yesterday, the Russian government publicly proposed to continue the diplomacy. I agree. We should give the diplomacy every chance to succeed. And I believe there are real ways to address our respective security concerns. The United States has put on the table concrete ideas to establish a security environment in Europe. We're proposing new arms control measures, new transparency measures, new strategic stability measures. These measures would apply to all parties, NATO and Russia alike. We're willing to make practical, result-oriented steps that can advance our common security. We will not sacrifice basic principles, though. Nations have a right to sovereignty and territorial integrity. They have the freedom to set their own course and choose with whom they will associate. But that still leaves plenty of room for diplomacy and for de-escalation. That's the best way forward for all parties, in our view. We'll continue our diplomatic efforts in close consultation with our allies and our partners. As long as there is hope of diplomatic resolution that prevents the use of force and avoids incredible human suffering that would follow, we will pursue it. The Russian defense minister reported today that some military units are leaving their positions near Ukraine. That would be good, but we have not yet verified that. We have not yet verified the Russian military units are returning to their home bases. Indeed, our analysts indicate that they remain very much in a threatening position. And the fact remains, right now, Russia has more than 150,000 troops encircling Ukraine and Belarus and along Ukraine's border. An invasion remains distinctly possible. That's why I've asked several times that all Americans in Ukraine leave now before it's too late to leave safely. It is why we have temporarily relocated our embassy from Kyiv to Lviv in western Ukraine, approaching the Polish border. And we've been transparent with the American people and with the world about Russia's plans and the seriousness of the situation so that everyone can see for themselves what is happening. We've shared what we know and what we're doing about it. Let me be equally clear about what we are not doing. The United States and NATO are not a threat to Russia. Ukraine is not threatening Russia. Neither the U.S. nor NATO have missiles in Ukraine. We do not have plans to put them there as well. We're not targeting the people of Russia. We do not seek to destabilize Russia. To the citizens of Russia, you are not our enemy. And I do not believe you want a bloody, destructive war against Ukraine, a country and a people with whom you share such deep ties of family, history, and culture. 77 years ago, our people fought and sacrificed side by side to end the worst war in history. World War II was a war of necessity. But if Russia attacks Ukraine, it would be a war of choice or a war without cause or reason. I say these things not to provoke, but to speak the truth, because the truth matters. Accountability matters. If Russia does invade in the days and weeks ahead, the human cost for Ukraine will be immense. And the strategic cost for Russia will also be immense.
Okay, so that's the beginning of President Joe Biden's speech. I know I said the Biden administration, but that was the man himself, Joe Biden. He delivered a decent enough speech. I mean, for Joe Biden, he stammers a lot. I edit this podcast, so you don't see my stammering because I don't have anyone protecting me from you people. All right? What do you mean, you people? Well, I mean the people listening to this. I protect myself with my edits. Anyway, I kid. Yeah, that was Joe Biden talking about what he would like to see, more diplomacy. That's great. He talked a little bit about the history between Russia and the United States. Well, you know, some people could say that, you know, were Russians and the U.S. really fighting side by side, or were they rushing to a Berlin capital to claim victory for their own country? Anyway, right? Russia beat us there. They're the ones that got Hitler's body and all that good stuff. Or is he in Argentina? Dun, dun, dun. More to come. No. So there it is, folks. It seems for at least today, war has been pushed back. And I believe it's both sides are sounding tough, but in the middle, they're talking about it. And that's good. That's what we want. We want countries to talk about it, work it out without all these wars. Wars are stupid. Wars suck. I'm not a fan of war. And I didn't want to see a war in Ukraine. I don't want to see a war in Russia. I don't want to see a war in Germany or the United States. My goodness. If a war between the U.S. and Russia goes down, folks, it could very well turn nuclear. And that is not good. We're talking, nuclear. We're talking also EMPs, electromagnetic pulse, that could, set us back 100 years. Lots of crazy stuff, folks. Lots of crazy stuff could happen between a war with Russia and the United States. Something that is quite concerning, and, talking about technology and the like, and how that would be implemented in a war now. Out of the AP News, cyber attacks knock out sites of Ukrainian army, major banks, Kiev, Ukraine. A series of cyber attacks on Tuesday knocked the websites of the Ukrainian army, the defense ministry, and major banks offline, Ukrainian authorities said, as tensions persisted over the threat of possible Russian invasion. Still, there was no indication the relatively low-level, distributed denial of service attacks might be a smokescreen for more serious and damaging cyber mischief. At least 10 Ukrainian websites were unreachable due to the attacks, including the Defense, Foreign, and Culture Ministries and Ukraine's two largest state banks. In such attacks, websites are barraged with a flood of junk data packets, rendering them unreachable. We don't have any information of other disruptive actions that could be hidden by this DDoS attack, said Viktor Zora, a top Ukrainian cyber defense official. He said emergency response teams were working to cut off the attackers, and recover service. AP News, folks. And I think we've talked about on the podcast how, war happens these days. Cyber attacks. You take the online access. You take the capability of communication away. Supply chains. Let's see what else. We've talked about EMPs. Man, an EMP would do all that in one, right? It would set all of us back 100 years. Vehicles don't run. Power is shut down. You want to, they're talking about cyber attacks against power grids. Remember the pipeline that was shut down that the company ended up paying a lot of money for? It was the Colonial Pipeline, the ransomware attack. It happened between May 6, 2021 and May 12, 2021. That's just some folks out there looking to make a dime. Imagine what countries with elite technology can do. It's beyond our wildest dreams. I mean, we've lived pretty cush here in the U.S. A lot of folks would be thrown off if something crazy were to happen. And I don't want to see that. So the update is this, folks. War is averted for today. Doesn't mean there won't be more war. It doesn't mean this might ramp back up. It doesn't mean it's ramped down at all. It just means war's been averted today, and hopefully more diplomacy and more continued prayers. Let's pray for Ukraine. Let's pray for the U.S., NATO, the Russian folks. Let's pray for the world. Peace on earth, man. That's what we're hoping for, right? But this is a political show, and there's evil actors out there, and that's why we fight evil with good. Hopefully. That's our job as Christians or people of faith or good people. All right? If you're not a Christian, I'm going to tell you to read the Bible, but I'm not going to judge you or say, you know what, you're an idiot, even though I'll think that. But anyway, just kidding. What else is in the news? Oh, before we get into the Trump and the Durham investigation, Canadian truckers. Wow. You guys, you've sparked a new political revolution, a peaceful revolution. It's amazing what's happening there. I know, Trudeau says they're terrorists, and the Prime Minister of Canada, they're terrorists, they're horrible people, and how dare they block roads, how dare they shut down our economy, how dare they... Are you kidding me? You're kidding me, right? Good night. There were some folks I posted over on Truman's Town Hall Facebook page, the podcast Facebook page, and they were talking a little bit about the protest and what they were seeing in their hometown of Ottawa, the capital.
Yeah. My name is Sungi Kulamala, and I own and operate a gym in Ottawa, downtown, called Sungi Fitness. My business has not been interrupted by any of what's been going on with the protest. I am in full support of the protest because I've actually taken the time to come down and speak to these people, get to know them, get to know why they're here, and hear their stories, which is what a lot of people aren't doing. And I believe that most people that are just spewing out hate and all this ugly language towards these truckers, those are the people who are staying at home and not making the effort to come downtown and talk to these people.
That's exactly it. So we heard of all these people from across Canada coming here for whatever reason they have. So we said, you know what, let's go out. Let's talk to all of our neighbors from across the country. And so far, every single person we have met has just met us with so much love, so much understanding, so much peace. And They've made me cry so many times just hearing their incredible stories for what they're fighting for. And I just love everyone so much. And we're just having this amazing conversation with these people here. And I'm so amazed at all of our beautiful community.
And even the other day, I brought my mother downtown, and she watches news religiously. So she sees what's going on, and she only hears from them. I brought her down here. She's like, I don't know what they're talking about on the news. These people are so friendly.
Yeah.
And this is coming from a person who's only getting her information from the news, but she made that effort to step out and go beyond that and actually speak to people.
All right, so that was a couple from Ottawa, a business owner, who was reporting on what was happening in Canada. I know, the initial reports, they're racist, blah, blah. Well, the gentleman in there was a black guy talking about this. It is what it is, folks. They're protesting for everyone's freedom. I know you're always going to, if it goes against the side of the quote unquote liberal, right? Then you're always going to hear about people being racist, whatever works for them, right? Whatever stirs folks up and gets them, oh, really? Well, I can't be, because most of us don't like racists. We would choose not to be on their side. So, of course, they're going to say, yeah, that's what it is. It's about racism. No, it's about freedom. It's about having the choice to either be vaccinated with a experimental potion, right, or choose not to, right? I think folks are starting to come around. Even in Los Angeles, they're starting to lift these mask mandates. Why our kids' school hasn't lifted it yet is beyond me. However, I spoke out. I did what I could. I don't know. Thankfully, the school gave out mask waivers. I filled those out, sent them in. Kids don't have to wear a mask at school. So there is a bit of an option. But still, they just need to lift them. I mean, really. I've had COVID. I talked about it on this podcast. That was my experience. I know folks have different experiences. Anyway, the point of this whole thing, I wasn't supposed to get into a long tangent, is in March, there's going to be a trucker convoy heading to Washington, D.C. if things don't start to lift. And I think the truckers in Canada did a great service for the entire world on these edicts that government strike down upon the people. It hasn't turned out good. But when has a politician ever said, you know what, I was wrong? I was wrong. No, they continue to fight back. They can't say, you know what, I messed up on that one, but I'm going to do better next time, and I'm going to, dig into the research, and I'm not going to get fooled again. Wait, Bush did say, fool me once. Can't fool me, can't fool me again. Remember that? All right. Yeah, so look for U.S. truckers to be heading to D.C. in March. That's what I'm hearing, folks. That's why we're not going to get too deep into this. We'll talk about that coming soon on a soon-to-come podcast. Anyway, Trump, Durham report, media. What are they saying now? Let's go to Fox News in the United States of America.
Let's bring in for immediate reaction Ohio GOP Congressman Jim Jordan. He's a member of the House Judiciary Committee and the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Congressman, thanks for being with us this morning. You've heard the news. What's your reaction?
With you. Yep. Well, President Trump was right. Remember back in 2017, when President Trump said they were spying on me, and the press and all the Democrats said, no, they weren't. And then in 2019, then Attorney General Bill Barr said spying took place at the FBI on President Trump's campaign, and everyone said, no. Well, now we know for sure. Now we know 100%. John Durham's revelation, John Durham's filing here. Yep, there was spying going on, and it was worse than we thought because they were spying on the sitting president of the United States, and it goes right to the Clinton campaign. So God bless John Durham and his investigation. It's taken a long time. But we're getting to now what we all suspected. The only thing we didn't understand was it was worse than we thought.
Congressman, just as a quick follow-up here, I think everyone, as they watch this, wonders, where will this go? Where will accountability lead us? Who will be held accountable? I got a note a little bit earlier in the show, and I want to run this by you. I don't know if this is directly within your knowledge, but that within federal crimes, there's a 5-year statute of limitations. We're talking about stuff now from 2016, 17. Are we already looking at something that has expired in terms of accountability, at least within the justice system?
Look, I don't know. Only John Durham knows that. I do know that some of these filings that he's done on Zussman and Danchenko were running up close to that 5-year statute of limitations. And we do know this. John Durham is going right back to the start. Understand, the indictment against Zussman wasn't about Zussman lying to John Durham and his investigative team. It was about the original lies, the lies that took place in 2016 when they started this whole concerted effort to go after a presidential campaign. That is what is so frightening here. You had the government working with the Clinton campaign to go after the Republican Party's nominee for president to spy on that campaign. We've never seen anything like this in history. So President Trump's statement yesterday, I think, is right on target. This is truly unprecedented, truly something that has never happened in the history of our great country. And then when you couple it with the context, the broader context of a few years ago, it was the Democrats using the IRS to target conservatives. Then it was this issue 5 years ago with them going after President Trump's campaign. And now we know just 4 months ago, the Department of Justice has set up this threat tag label, and they are putting that threat tag, that label, on moms and dads showing up at school board meetings. So when you view it in context, it's even more frightening.
Sure is. Congressman, you mentioned the way the media has characterized this. Of course, from the beginning, they denied, not just denied it, but pursued the official narrative of those peddling this to the FBI and to the media. We just want to remind our viewers with a bit of a flashback. Here's how the media and Democrats characterized the Durham probe. Watch this.
The biggest scandal was when they spied on my campaign. They spied on my campaign.
There's no real evidence of that.
Of course there is. It's all over the place. Leslie,
Sir,
they spied on my campaign and they got caught.
Donald Trump and William Barr promised that Durham would expose huge corruption, but he hasn't done that.
Is apparently an ongoing, concerted Republican and pro-Trump project to try to turn the investigation of the Russia scandal into some kind of scandal itself.
Oh, no. Okay, wait till the Durham report comes out. And then nothing happens, and they just move on to the next conspiracy theory. It is never going to end. And guess what? People who want to believe that BS are going to believe it.
So, Congressman, yet again, we go to that word misinformation. So it was conspiracy theories and misinformation until it's proven not to be.
Yeah. Well, the conspiracy theory and the misinformation came from Adam Schiff, the Democrats, and the mainstream press. Remember what Schiff said? There is more than circumstantial evidence that President Trump worked with the Russians. That was false, completely false. The media reported it. It's proven to be false. But I tell you what, there is certainly now more than circumstantial evidence that the Democrats and the FBI and the Clinton campaign spied on President Trump's campaign. So, yeah, the country sees it. It seems like everything they call us for on misinformation and, quote, conspiracy theory actually turns out to be true. And they're the ones peddling the false narratives all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I have to tell you, Congressman, first of all, I was really surprised to hear that these indictments came out, that this investigation was still going. I kind of thought maybe it would not. I mean, that's how much of a loss.
So did Don Lemon.
Yeah, John Lemon thought the same thing. But I mean, I think all of us wonder, who's going to be held accountable? I mean, you saw those three guys, but how far up do you think this can go? Because the American people need to regain their trust in government. This is like third world stuff. This, as you said, it's like Watergate, but this is weaponizing government and our intelligence agencies and working with big tech. I mean, this is really big stuff.
Yeah, no, and again, I think it's important to view all this in context. You think about what the Democrats have done. The Democrats, just this year, the Democrats have closed the Capitol, allowed proxy voting, kicked Republicans off committee, won't let Republicans, for the first time in American history, serve on a select committee. They're trying to end the Electoral College, trying to end the filibuster, trying to pack the court, trying to let non-citizens vote. The January 6th committee has altered evidence and lied to the American people about it. And now we find out, oh, by the way, the Democrat campaign committee of Hillary Clinton was spying on the sitting president of the United States. You view it all in context. Let's hope people are held accountable. I know when former director of national intelligence John Ratcliffe was director, he made sure that certain documents were made available to Durham about the top people in the intelligence division under President Obama. So we'll see where Brennan or McCabe or Comey or any of these guys, we'll see what happens. I don't know. Only John Durham knows. And obviously, he is being persistent. He is being methodical about this entire investigation. We'll see where it all shakes out.
All right. there it was, ladies and gentlemen, a little clip from Fox News and our congressman here in Ohio, Jim Jordan. Out of the Hill, Durham alleges cyber analysis exploited access to Trump White House server. John Durham, the special counsel appointed under former President Trump to investigate the FBI's probing of Russia interference in the 2016 election, alleged in court that a tech executive exploited access to White House data in order to find damning information about Trump. In a court filing submitted Friday, Durham's office said that the executive, who was referred to in legal filings only as Tech Executive 1, but has been identified in news reports as Rodney Jaffe, used his company's access to non-public government domain name systems data through a pending cybersecurity contract as he was analyzing supposed links between the Trump organization and a Russian bank. Tech Executive 1, this is in quotes, Tech Executive 1's employer, Internet Company 1, had come to access and maintain dedicated servers for the EOP as part of a sensitive arrangement whereby it provides DNS resolution services to the EOP. Durham's office wrote using an acronym for the White House's Executive Office of the President. Tech Executive 1 and his associates exploited this arrangement by mining the EOP's DNS traffic and other data for the purpose of gathering derogatory information about Donald Trump. An attorney representing Jaffe did not immediately respond when asked for comment. The filing came in Durham's prosecution against Michael Sussman, an attorney who represented Jaffe and worked on behalf of the Democrats in Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign for a single count of making false statements to the FBI's general counsel. It goes on to report several other things. Who is Michael Sussman? Let's start with that. All right, Michael A. Sussman is a former federal prosecutor and former partner at the law firm Perkins Coie, who focused on privacy and cybersecurity law. Sussman represented the Democratic National Committee and retained CrowdStrike, these are all names we've heard before, to examine servers after WikiLeaks leaked DNC emails in 2016. Remember what happened to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange? It has been approved to be extradited to the United States to face these charges, right? But he's appealed it, so he's still there. In September 2021, Sussman was indicted by a grand jury and paneled by Special Counsel John Durham's investigation into the origins of the FBI Russia probe into possible links between Russian officials and associates of President candidate Donald Trump. Sussman pleaded not guilty to the charge, asserting it was politically motivated. So Michael Sussman, this lawyer, is all over this. All over this, folks. Who has he allegedly hired? Someone named Rodney Jaffe. Jaffe is an internet entrepreneur, internet data expert. He is a recipient of the FBI's Director's Award for Outstanding Cyber Investigation for his role uncovering the Mariposa botnet. He is also one of a group of 4 experts, including Michael Sussman, David Dagan, who was involved in the research possible internet links between the Trump organization and Alpha Bank in Russia. Special Counsel John Durham alleged in February 2022, this is an updated article, that Jaffe had monitored internet traffic from Trump Tower and the White House seeking derogatory information on Donald Trump through Durham. Though Durham did not assert Jaffe's alleged activity was unlawful or conducted at the direction of the Hillary Clinton presidential campaign. Interesting. Bill O'Reilly did some in-depth reporting on this. He's on the First now. He former Fox News host, big guy, got in trouble with a loofah sponge and whatnot. You can look it up. But he's still out there, and he's still delivering his take on the news. He's a conservative guy. He's an older guy, but this is what he had to say on the Rodney Jaffe's role in Russiagate.
So the latest thing is this. The federal government apparently hired a man named Rodney Jaffe, Joffe. Jaffe runs a company, or was called New Star, Inc. I think they changed the name or whatever. New Star had a contract with the federal government. It's a high-tech company, all right? Federal government paid New Star to do some tech work for it. I'm not sure what it was. Nobody knows yet. But New Star was working for the feds. And as part of the job, New Star had access to government computers and information on those computers. Apparently, Jaffe had a deal, secret deal, with Sussman, okay, to what they call mine, M-I-N-E, information from Trump computers at the Trump Tower in New York City and later on at the White House. So nobody knew Jaffe was working for Sussman, who was working for the Clinton campaign. You get the pipeline here? Now, I assume Jaffe is paid a lot of money, but I don't know yet. That's what Durham's trying to find out. But there was surveillance on the Trump Tower software and later the White House software by New Star and Jaffe. And they were trying to get information, any information they could get, linking Trump to Putin. All right? Now, they didn't get any, so Sussman made it up. And subsequently, other people made it up. But they were surveilling, what they call surveilling. That's a tap. I used that word yesterday. In the old-time killing the mob days, the FBI would tap electronically the phone because there weren't any computers back then. Now, mining what goes on a private computer is really a tap, just so you know. Okay. So then Durham puts this stuff out. But there are a lot of stuff that we don't know, as I just said. We don't know who hired New Star in the first place. We don't know if Jaffe was being paid millions of dollars. We don't know any of that yet. What we do know is that this happened, all right? That the Trump computers in a private place, Trump Tower is private, and then a public place, the White House, were being surveilled, i.e. tapped. You with me now? Okay. Again, this Wall Street Journal article is very good. So in response, the left-wing press said, there's nothing new. No, nothing new here at all. And the right-wing people like O'Reilly are distorting everything. All right? Now remember, mining, tapping, surveilling is a felony, both federal and state. Don't expect New York to investigate. Not going to do it. These people are corrupt.
As long as we're on the Fox News run, let's listen to this clip from Waters. And former press secretary for George W. Bush opens it up. Here we go.
Special Counsel John Durham dropping a bombshell that could lead right back to Hillary Clinton. A court filing alleges multiple Clinton campaign staffers hired a technology company to, quote, infiltrate servers at Trump Tower and then later the actual White House in order to try to establish a link from Donald Trump to Russia. And breaking this afternoon, sources telling Fox News that Durham's probe has accelerated with more people cooperating and coming before a grand jury. Republicans say it is proof they've been right all along and that heads should start rolling.
This is what's so egregious and so wrong about it. I mean, you think about it, they spied on a presidential campaign. That's as wrong as it gets. But then we found out from this filing that they actually spied on a sitting president, which is even worse.
I would expect there to be, frankly, quite a few more indictments. I think this conspiracy, and I do think there was a criminal conspiracy, is broad and deep.
And after endless coverage of the Russia investigation, the media seems to be silent on this particular development. And the way they covered the Durham investigation in the past is drawing even more scrutiny.
The biggest scandal was when they spied on my campaign. They spied on my campaign.
There's no real evidence of that.
Of course there is.
No.
It's all over the place. Leslie,
Sir,
they spied on my campaign and they got caught.
Donald Trump and William Barr promised that Durham would expose huge corruption, but he hasn't done that.
Is apparently an ongoing concerted Republican and pro-Trump project to try to turn the investigation of the Russia scandal into some kind of scandal itself.
Oh, no. Okay, wait till the Durham report comes out. And then nothing happens and they just move.
Wait a minute. Wasn't Fox News the one who fired Judge Napolitano? Or got rid of him or let him go or however they did him, the way they did him, for exposing this very news report? Yet now that's all they want to talk about, Fox News. All they want to talk about is how what Judge Napolitano said a few years ago has come true. When Fox News comes out and says, "You're vindicated, Judge, you're vindicated," then I will have more respect for Fox News. But at this point, I don't. And you guys have listened to this podcast. You know I'm not the biggest Trump fan in the world. If this happened to if the RNC, if the Republicans, like Watergate years ago, that's horse crap. For Richard Nixon to be involved in spying on a campaign, that's not how we do that in America, folks. And now it's happening again. But the roles are reversed. It's now the Democrats spying on the Republicans. We can't go down that road. It'll just get more messy as we go. And when it does, what happens? We live in a corrupt political atmosphere. Yeah, some would say it's pretty much corrupt as it is. And there are folks that would be right on saying that. Oh, folks, Judge Napolitano was actually on the Alex Jones show today. This is long. It's about 37 minutes long. So if you don't want to listen to it, that's fine. But I'm going to play Judge Napolitano on the Alex Jones show today, who has yet to be vindicated by Fox News, who broke this story, who was forced out because he broke this story, and it turns out to be true. Folks, we got to hold all media outlets accountable, and this is one of them. It's about 30 minutes, but I want you to enjoy this. Ladies and gentlemen, Judge Andrew Napolitano on the Alex Jones show, and then we'll end this podcast. I appreciate you downloading. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing with a friend. I'll be back with a better show, hopefully next time. I know this one's a little clunky, but hey, we're just getting back into it again. Thanks again. Now here's Judge Napolitano on the Alex Jones show about the Durham may be targeting Obama in the Spygate investigation.
We've got him for the rest of the hour, and I'm really, really excited. Former judge, former top Fox News host, completely vindicated on spying on Trump, got suspended at Fox for saying this 4+ years ago, and then that was the slow decline. They kind of locked him up, and we didn't hear much from him then. I predicted when it happened they would wait till people forgot about him by shutting him down and then get rid of him. Totally vindicated, a real hero. The Durham investigation, I'll be able to lay it all out on the other side or here in just a moment, but I wanted to play a short compilation of him back in the time, 2017, doing what no other mainstream media person would do, tell the truth. Here it is.
Former judge and frequent Fox News contributor Andrew Napolitano has reportedly been taken off the air for now. Multiple outlets say Napolitano has been sidelined at Fox for repeating on-air unverified claims that former President Obama asked UK intelligence to spy on Trump Tower.
Did Barack Obama spy on Donald Trump when President Obama was in the White House and President Trump was Mr. Trump running for office? Well, we don't really know the answer to that. Sources have told Fox News that President Obama could very easily have and probably did use a foreign intelligence service to gather this information for him.
3 intelligence sources have informed Fox News that President Obama went outside the chain of command. He used GCHQ. What the heck is GCHQ? That's the initials for the British spying agency.
Both White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer and President Trump defended accusations against Obama by pointing to Napolitano. Fox News' Shepard Smith walked back Napolitano's claim shortly thereafter.
Fox News cannot confirm Judge Napolitano's commentary. Fox News knows of no evidence of any kind that the now President of the United States was surveilled at any time in any way. Full stop.
All right, so 4+ years later, Judge Napolitano totally vindicated. We're about 2 minutes from break, but sir, I know you're not about vindicating yourself, but we could see you getting penalized, shut down, and then removed from air for telling the truth and going after Obama, Hillary, the whole deep state. Now you are like going to be the image in the dictionary next to the word vindication now. Thanks for joining us on short notice, Judge.
You're very kind to say that, Alex, and thank you for running those old clips when my hair was a little darker. Look, I woke up yesterday morning like everybody else did. I hadn't paid attention to what Durham had filed over the weekend, but we now know that a significant arm of the federal government, armed with FBI agents and CIA agents, used federal assets to spy on Mr. Donald Trump during his presidential campaign and on President Donald Trump after he was already the president of the United States. We now know that, and the federal government of the United States acknowledges it, and if it has to, is prepared to prove it in court in the case against Michael Sussman.
Is that the craziest thing in your career? In my life, I've never seen anything like this. This is crazy.
Well, it was crazy because nobody would accept it. Nobody wanted to accept it. People came to me and begged to me, you owe President Obama an apology. For what? About 3 months later, 5 GCHQ, that's British intelligence agents, went to the Guardian of London, a left-wing publication, and said, that judge in New York is correct. We didn't personally do it, but we know who did. So there was somewhat of a vindication then. The United States government, the Obama administration, still didn't accept it. But the filing from John Durham on Friday afternoon is so definitive. There's no way he could have made that filing unless he has the absolute proof to substantiate it. And of course, it gets deeper. I
was about to say, it gets deeper, sir. Please stay there. We're right back. You're going to have the floor. We're so honored to have you because this is so big of the future of our country to expose this bureaucratic coup. We'll be right back. Well, I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I am starstruck right now because I've always loved Judge Knapp, watching decades on TV. I got to interview him before and, hang out with him some in New York. But now that he's vindicated and been punished and basically taken off the air for telling the truth, he was suspended and then phased out for exposing illegal deep state spying. And now we know it wasn't just the British. It wasn't just these private corporations, but then the government was involved, and the wheels are coming off this, and we're just blessed to have him here to lay this all out. Be sure and bookmark his site and find his weekday show, judgenap.com, judgenap.com. Judge, I wonder, I'm not going to criticize Fox News or others, but are they going to have you on for a victory lap now that you're so incredibly vindicated? That's probably a tongue-in-cheek question, but you were saying this is a huge deal. It certainly is. Explain to us why this is so definitive and what this Durham investigation means. And now the former head of national intelligence and all these folks say dozens of more indictments are coming out because they, quote, gave Durham the documents. What does all this mean?
Well, I don't know about the indictments because some of these crimes have a 5-year statute of limitations, and much of this happened in 2016. So do the math. We're beyond the 5 years, which means Hillary herself may skate. However, if this was a conspiracy, and apparently it was, and if John Durham can report it, the 5 years is measured when the crime is completed, not when the crime started. So it would depend how far into the Trump administration the conspiracy extended. if the conspiracy ended on election day, it's too late to do anything about it. But it appears from the documents that John Durham filed on Friday afternoon that the conspiracy did not end on election day. It appears that there was a conversation in the Oval Office after Trump was elected, in which President Obama himself participated, and discussions were had about using federal assets to spy on him. And there are two very interesting people present there besides the President Obama. One is Jake Sullivan, who was Mrs. Clinton's chief intelligence advisor on spying and intelligence matters. He's now President Joe Biden's national security director. He has the highest national security clearance in the country. It's the same as the president's. The other interesting person there was Vice President Joe Biden. Now, this, of course, was 4 years ago. Was he part, Alex, was he part of the conspiracy to undermine Donald Trump's presidency by using federal assets? You know, you can compare this to Watergate. Watergate was the use of private assets paid for by the Republican National Committee to break into an office and seize proof of who was having sex with whom and who was paying who off. This is the use of federal assets. Jim Comey, all the way on the left there. John Brennan, head of the FBI at the time. John Brennan, all the way on the right there, head of the CIA at the time. So this is according to Durham, the use of federal assets to undermine a presidency. Now, that is a half dozen different crimes there. It would just depend upon when these crimes were committed or when this conspiracy ended or how much fortitude Durham has and who he goes after.
So there's been a lot of criticism of Durham taking years and years, but to me, I'm not a famous judge like you or a legal scholar, but this is like a super big ballsy move to do this with Merrick Garland as the Attorney General and all this. I mean, this is like the hydrogen bomb effect, because we knew it was going on. I should ask you, how you knew from your sources, but we had our sources. We were talking about it too, but this is just such a big deal. This has got to really concern, as you said, not just Hillary, but clearly this goes above that.
Well, it does, and I know you want to talk about this eventually. Why isn't the media covering this? Why is InfoWars and Newsmax and Fox News and the Wall Street Journal?
Exactly. I should have said that first. No one's covering. This makes Watergate look like a child's play. I mean, this is huge.
It does. Yes, it does. This should be. Never mind my allegations against the Obama administration. This is proof from a federal prosecutor. This should be on the front page, top of the fold of the same Washington Post that brought Richard Nixon down. And the same New York Times that claims it's the standard in American journalism, but you haven't heard a peep about them. You haven't heard it on CNN or MSNBC or CNBC or any of the networks. They think and hope that by ignoring this, it will go away. Now, it could go away if Michael Sussman pleads guilty. That's the lawyer accused of lying to the FBI, who was a lawyer for Hillary Clinton's campaign. Because he pleaded not guilty and there will be a trial, this stuff will come out at the trial. Now, I got to say a word about the crime that Sussman's charged with. I don't believe it should be a crime to lie to the FBI. Why? Because the Supreme Court has said the FBI can lie to you. Well, if the FBI can lie to you, you should be able to lie to them. They're not morally superior to you, but I am wrong. The law is what it is. If you lie to the FBI in an official inquiry, you can be indicted and prosecuted. That's what happened to Sussman.
And Judge, let me interrupt you because I'm always interested about this. That's why I won't talk to the FBI. I won't talk to the Jan 6 committee. It's not that I'm going to lie. It's that they're going to say I'm a liar and indict me. So it's not just that you can't lie to them. They then say you're lying and play little split hairs games. When did that become the law that you can't lie to the FBI?
Oh, I don't know, but it's been the law for a long time, and the FBI will use it to the hilt. Here's in the Martha Stewart case, in the same conversation in which she lied to them, they lied to her. The FBI agent who lied to her got a promotion. She went to jail. She was convicted of lying. This is considered a low-level crime. The maximum penalty is just a year in jail. To a lawyer, it's devastating because you'll lose your license to practice. But the committee that you talk about sought you. In the Sussman case, he sought the FBI. He knocked on the door and said, I have to come to you. I have devastating information about this guy, Donald Trump, and his connections to Russia. Question, are you representing the Hillary Clinton campaign? Oh, no. I have this from independent sources. That's the alleged lie. He instigated the conversation himself, during which it is alleged that he lied, and he had the conversation with his now former friend, Peter Baker, who was the general counsel of the FBI. Normally, you don't get to talk to the general counsel about this evidence, but when you're a high-ranking, big-shot Washington, D.C. lawyer, and the general counsel is your friend, and you want to feed him some nonsense, that's the guy you go to.
Wow. We're going to go to break and come back. This is just riveting. Judge Andrew Napolitano, I don't want to make this about yourself, but just in 50 seconds here, I mean, how did you know all this stuff? I guess sources? Because you've been proven right.
Well, yes, I had sources. One of my sources outed himself, and the New York Times went for his jugular. But something of this magnitude, you have to verify it to 3 levels. So in addition to the source who outed himself, I had 2 other sources who were able to verify what I said before I said it.
Wow, Judge Andrew Napolitano is with us. You got to bookmark his site and watch his show. I watch it all the time, judgenap.com. And, man, I just thought of him instantly this weekend when this all broke. I was like, oh, my gosh. Because, I mean, he was one of the top guys at Fox. As soon as he covered this, bloop, they phased his ass out. And that's what people pay for, to tell the truth. We'll be right back. He's a hero. Well, completely vindicated, the capital V, Judge Andrew Napolitano joins us. The minute in 2017, he covered illegal spying against the Trump campaign and President Trump. From his sources, they suspended him and then basically pulled him off TV until he was finally let go. And that was the reason for that. We could all see it. And he's a tough guy. He's not whining about it. He wants to just talk about the current news and how big this is. But wow, Clinton campaign paid to infiltrate Judge Napolitano broke all this. Again, Trump campaign paid to infiltrate Trump Tower. White House servers to link Trump to Russia. Durham finds. And he's got the evidence. And he's indicted the Clinton lawyer. And we know all this went on. And as you said, they outed themselves. They had a New York Times article on January 20th, 2017, where they bragged that they had wiretapped Trump and claimed that was the evidence he was a Russian. But there was no evidence. So that was the first outing. Then Napolitano dug into it and found out more. So I could ask 1,000 questions, Judge, but in the 25 minutes we've got left, I'd like to just give you the floor, just the run of this show as the guy that tried to stop this deep state coup against America on what's currently happening, how you think they're going to respond back to this, what is Hillary, what does Obama do? Because what do you call this? That's my first question in this segment. Do we call it Obama Spygate, Hillary Spygate? Do we call this deep state coup against America? What do we call this scandal of scandals?
You know, that's a good question. Somebody who's good at this stuff will put a handle on it, and that handle will last. But the law will call this a conspiracy, an agreement to break laws. And that's really the danger to Mrs. Clinton. Because if this conspiracy continued on into 2017, probably up to the time that President Trump fired Jim Comey, which is May of 17, well, that's fewer than 5 years ago. 5 years is the statute of limitations. So the statute begins to run when the crime is committed. If you pull a trigger and kill somebody, that's when the crime is committed. But if it takes that person 2 or 3 months to die, the statute of limitations doesn't start to run until they die. If you have a conspiracy to interfere with a valid election of a president of the United States, I'm talking about the election of Donald Trump in 2016, and that conspiracy continues into 2017, even after he's the president, well, that is fewer than 5 years ago, because the statute of limitations is 5 years. So those who are breathing a sigh of relief probably have more to worry about than they think they do. When John Ratcliffe the former congressman from Texas and former director of national intelligence under Donald Trump, told my former colleagues at Fox News this past weekend that there may be some indictments coming. I'm pretty sure that's Ratcliffe. I'm pretty sure that's what he was talking about. So if Mrs. Clinton and Jake Sullivan and John Brennan and Jim Comey entered into an agreement in the fall of 2016, and that agreement carried into the presidency of Donald Trump until Comey was fired in May of 2017. Well, May of 2017 is fewer than 5 years ago. So Durham then has time to present all of this to a grand jury and ask them to indict. On the other hand, if the conspiracy ended at the election of Donald Trump in November of 16, well, then those who want to see these characters prosecuted are out of luck.
But what Durham is saying is this continued on into the White House, and if you look at this and the things they said and did, I mean, I think that's where Durham's going. What do you think's happening?
I think that's where he's going as well. And he very well may be targeting the former president, Barack Obama. I mean, if Barack Obama convened a group of people, if he convened a group of people in the Oval Office, which included Jack Brennan, whom you see there, then the head of the CIA, Jim Comey, the head of the FBI, Mrs. Clinton, Joe Biden, Jake Sullivan, and himself, and they agreed to use the assets of the federal government to spy on and thus undermine the president-elect who was about to become the president of the United States, then we have a very, very serious problem on our hands. Now, let me suggest this to you. We know the spying was going on at least up until the time of the inauguration, because 2 days after the inauguration is the FBI's infamous visit to General Flynn in his office in the White House. And they were able to ask him questions and get him to contradict what they knew he had said on the phone to the Russian ambassador just a week or so before. So were they spying on the Russian ambassador or spying on General Flynn after he was announced he was going to be the national security advisor to then President-elect Trump, or were they spying on both?
I know you don't like to speculate, but just as a guy that's been around the block a few times, gut level, where do you think this goes? Who do you think's most concerned? Because I remember things like Jim Comey testifying to Congress. I never talked to the press. I'm not involved in leaking. And later, well, I did call the head of a major university so he could tell the press. Well, that's the same thing. If I'm a mafia boss and I tell my underling to go have somebody killed, I'm just as guilty. So I don't get how Comey tells Congress I never leaked. I just leaked through somebody else. That doesn't make sense.
Well, look, John Durham would have been unwise to have filed the document that he did last Friday, laying all this out. A, if he couldn't prove it, and B, if he wasn't prepared to prove it. Because he doesn't really need to go through this just to prove that this fellow, Michael Sussman, told a lie to the then general counsel of the FBI. You know, there's one thing about prosecutors, and this is good and bad. They always like to prove their worth. I mean, it is the rare prosecutor that spends a fortune, that's Durham, that spends a fortune in government money to investigate and then doesn't indict. Because then he's got to justify, what the hell did you spend all that money on?
So you're saying they have their case, and just like a mafia case, they're going after the Clinton lawyer, and then to Clinton, and then to Obama, Brennan, all the deep state players.
I think there's a rational argument to support that, Alex. You said it better than I could. Look, just in those days when I made these allegations about the Brits spying on Trump, well, there's Jim Clapper in the middle. Now, he skated. He lied under oath when he was asked by a liberal Democratic Senator Wyden from Oregon, does the government spy on Americans? And he said no. And then he said not wittingly. And then about a month or so later, he, in a letter, apologized and admitted he had lied under oath. And they decided not to prosecute him That event was well more than 5 years ago, but that was public perjury over information that we all knew he was lying about. The questioner, Senator Wyden, knew he was lying about it. Anybody that followed Edward Snowden knew that he was lying about it. But here's what I was saying before your producers put up the photograph of Jim Clapper. The concept that prosecutors need to justify their worth is well known in the legal community. Durham is a lifelong prosecutor. I don't think he would have put that stuff out there last Friday if he didn't intend to demonstrate it. And if Sussman pleads guilty, then Durham's only forum in which to demonstrate this will be a trial against somebody else whom he has yet to indict.
And the whole question is statute of limitations. But if you get into ongoing, they were spying after that. That will lead to the later spying during the 4 years of Trump. And then now it's a bunch of other investigations. Judge Andrew Napolitano is on fire. And is the Phoenix vindicated? I mean, wow. I remember when he came out and said they were spying on Trump with evidence. I said, that guy's not going to be on air very long, and he wasn't. But he is still on air and regrowing his show. We really support him and appreciate him. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Well, I admire people that are male, female, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, old, young. But you know who they are? They're the trailblazers. They're the mavericks. They're the people that time and time again I watch it and listen to or observe in life who are being truthful, that are being honest, and that really know what they're talking about. That's who I admire. More and more, though, the corporate media is dying. Even Fox's ratings are down, but nothing compared to CNN with 100,000 viewers on average, MSNBC, because people know that's not genuine. It's okay if we make mistakes sometimes, but the people know we're trying to tell them the truth because we respect them, because we respect ourselves. And Judge Andrew Napolitano got phased out because that was the move he made. Telling the truth when everybody else knew Trump was being spied on. They bragged they were spying on him. We know he's a Russian. We're spying on him. Napolitano's like, boom, I got you. Goes and looks it up, goes after him. They come after him. So people want men and women to do the right things. But then when we do the right things, some people don't back us. So I know you don't want to talk about yourself all day, Judge Napolitano, but any other points about the Durham investigation, how big this is, other key angles? And then I just want to ask you in closing, in the 10 minutes we have left or 9 minutes we have left, just in general, your view on vaccine mandates and open borders and Biden's low approval rating and just any other, because I can talk to you for 10 hours about things happening in the world and just your view of where humanity is right now, Judge.
Well, Alex, you and I have been friends for years, and I have admired your work for years. And you also have suffered at the hands of people who press buttons in the world because you've not hesitated to tell the truth. And I think the overwhelming majority of the people watching and listening to us now would agree with what I just said about you. You are a hero to many, many, many people. Your ratings are astronomical. And that's because you always say what you believe to be the truth, and you have the means with which to back it up. Other than what I said about knowing the prosecutorial mindset and knowing that John Durham has that mindset, he needs to justify himself. I really don't think he's going to stop at the indictment of Michael Sussman, Hillary Clinton's former campaign lawyer, for what's considered a low-level crime, because the punishment is often not even incarceration. Lying to the FBI. If you lie to the FBI and send them on a wild goose chase and they spent a fortune chasing down your lie, well, then they're going to come after you very aggressively. But if the FBI knows at the moment you lie to them that it was a lie, then they're not going to come after you aggressively unless they have nothing else to come after you for. So during the Reagan administration, there's a famous arrest on a Brooklyn street corner. In the years and the days when we used to have phone booths, the FBI had cornered a major Colombian drug dealer, but they had no evidence. They knew in their hearts who he was, but they had no evidence with which to arrest him. He got out of the phone booth, and an FBI agent went up to him and said, "Hey, buddy, what's your name?" And he said, "Nancy Reagan." And they arrested him for lying to the FBI. Now, that led to the acquisition of evidence against him and a prosecution and a lifetime sentence. But without some hook on which to hang their hats, which came out of his own mouth, they wouldn't have been able to do it. On the other hand, if they want to frame you, as you know they can and have done, as they did to Martha Stewart, as they would try to do to you, then your best bet is not to talk to them.
Okay, I'm glad you raised that, because that's a question I meant to ask you and I'd forgotten. What do you make of January 6th? I've been subpoenaed. We offered him, hey, you want my emails with all my text messages? I'll give you written statement answers, but I'm not going to have you twist this and do a perjury trap. And they just didn't do that, so now they may give me immunity. I don't even know anything. We tried to have peaceful demonstrations. What do you make of this January 6th? And now that they've got the new terrorism directive by the president saying questioning elections or questioning lockdowns is terror, and then Trudeau's declared a civil emergency, and they're going to grab bank accounts without court orders. What do you make of this climate?
Well, the climate is reprehensible. It's totalitarianism on steroids. You and our mutual friend and colleague, in my case, a boyhood friend, Roger Stone, did the right thing when the committee summons you. Don't play footsie with them. The way Mark Meadows was a decent human being. I've known Mark since his early days in Congress. Don't play footsie with them. Don't give them some things and then decide to throw up your hands if you don't like the questions they're answering you. Don't answer a single question except who you are and how they can reach you. That's the way you and Roger Stone dealt with it. In terms of Trudeau, he's just as bad as his father. There's no national emergency. The statute itself defines national emergency as one where the government is unable to protect the security and freedom of Canada, not one in which the roads are clogged. But that statute, which he has triggered, gives him tremendous power, as you say, to arrest without warrant or evidence and without preferring charges against the people arrested. To confiscate bank accounts, to confiscate trucks, to confiscate insurance policies on the trucks, which of course is insane, because then you got a 16-wheeler on the highway without insurance on it. So wow, he's just reprehensible. In terms of the vaccines, I've been campaigning against them for a long time. It's not a vaccine, as you have said. A vaccine gives you a small dose of the disease. Your body fights it off. You have the immunity and the antibodies forever. This is a chemical cocktail, which is an experiment at lessening the effects of the disease. It doesn't prevent you from getting it. It doesn't prevent you from transmitting it. The Supreme Court has ruled several times, you control your own body. You decide what goes into it. The government of the United States of America signed a treaty called the Nuremberg Protocols, which prohibit the use of government compulsion to take experimental chemicals into the body. So we are on very solid ground legally and morally, but big government, big pharma, and big medicine have persuaded the public that they are right and we are wrong. So again, it takes courage. The truck drivers in Canada have to be courageous. People like you need to be courageous. People listening to us now need to recognize that they decide what goes in their bodies, not Dr. Fauci and not the government.
Beautifully said. I see your clips on YouTube, watch them all the time. I've also tuned into your amazing podcast, because you're not just, handicapped by 10 minutes a day on Fox on a few shows. You can really get into deep thought. It's amazing. Judging Freedom. Everybody should search that on the different platforms and follow it. JudgeNap.com. You can find it all there as well. Judging Freedom, available on YouTube. Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, thank you so much for the time. And again, I know you've been through a lot for telling the truth, and I just appreciate you for myself, my crew, and my family. Thank you so much for being a great American.
Thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure. Anytime, I'm available for you.
God bless you. God bless you. Thank you.